West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We knew who she is before she was elected into the office. The voters in her district voted her in anyway. We didn't, though, know about these specific posts, including liking one that talked about a bullet to the head of the Speaker of the House.
But she ran an ad. She ran an ad when she was running for office holding an AR-15 and having pictures of members of Congress who, of course, were women of color. Boy, that's a shock. Where she said she was going after them. I don't know if she used the exact word targeting them.
To go on offense.
Can you take her picture down while I'm talking?
Yeah.
Can you take her picture down? Can you take her picture down while I'm talking? Thank you. But this is, we don't bring this up to bring her up because I don't want to bring up people in, that are backbenchers. We bring it up to tell those lugheads in the United States Senate that think that this is just another Trump fight, that you have people in your midst that have called for the assassination of members of Congress. You have people in your midst that actually may have been involved in helping locate you while you were hiding. You have people in your midst that actually may have been involved in all this. They certainly were cheering it on. So Willie, we're not talking about a debate over the Import-Export Bank here. All right? We're not talking about a debate over the organization of the United States Senate, the procedures behind that. A terrifically boring debate. A normal debate, the sort of debates Washington used to have. We're now talking about a movement and a president that inspired people to come to Capitol Hill to try to kill, their words, not mine, the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House. And guess what? Mike Pence is now in Indiana because of Donald Trump, trying to lay low. Because there are people now who have Mike Pence on their hit list because of Donald Trump. Not because of Don Lemon. Not because of Rachel Maddow. Not because of Jake Tapper. Not because of the New York Times editorial page. Not because of the Washington Post. And good luck, Marty Baron.
Yeah.
Mike Pence is in fear for his life because of Donald J. Trump. And Willie, when they get on the House floor and pretend like this is 1999 or 2008 or They are doing themselves, they are doing their party, they are doing America a grave disservice, because this sort of terrorism has to be stamped out. Listen, I'm a conservative. A lot of people didn't like my views after 9/11. I don't really care. I sort of agreed with Dick Cheney with the 1% solution. Your job, if you're a leader, is to stop another attack against this country, right? Well, guess what? I'm that same guy in 2020. You come after us, you come after our capital, we're going to come after you. And we sure as hell are not going to let you inside our capital. We sure as hell are not going to tell everybody, let's just pretend this is going to go away. What if Ted Cruz just said after 9/11, you know what? Let's just pretend this is going to go away. Let's just forget about it. 9/11, would Ron Johnson say, let's just forget about it? Yeah, they attacked the Pentagon. Yeah, they attacked. Let's just forget about it. That's what Lindsay wants us to do. He wants us to forget about the fact that people were bludgeoned in the head with an American flag because of Donald Trump. He wants us to forget that a cop was beaten to death. And the reason why the cop killer beat the cop to death was because they were inspired by Donald Trump to do so. Ted Cruz wants us to forget because he led the sedition along with Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. Forget? You're out of your mind and you're not a conservative. That's how conservatives do not talk. We don't forget. If you attack our country, we go after you. We jail you. We throw away the key. You come after our capital? And you think, Ron, it's simply vindictive? To see justice for the leader of the insurrection, Marco? You hide behind procedural safeguards. This is a procedure. We can't go after him. It's a No. Find a constitutional lawyer that supports justice and quote that justice. This is what the Republicans in the Senate want you to forget. This is what Rand Paul wants you to forget. This is what Ted Cruz wants you to forget. This is what Ron Johnson wants you to forget. And I say never forget. Just like I said after 9/11, never forget that the Islamic terrorists came to our country and attacked us. And you know what? I said we needed to call them Islamic terrorists. You know why? Because they were Islamic terrorists. You know what these people are? These are Trump terrorists. Call them by their name.
It is Wednesday, the 27th of January of 2021. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome white nationalists? Oh, they're everywhere. Oh, well, we got some good news. Looks like Fox is not going to be part of the White House press corps because of certain requirements to be part of the White House press corps. And apparently Fox News doesn't, they don't fit the bill. Which I presume OAN and Newsmax would fit the bill even less. Well, that's good news because we don't want propaganda and propagandists in the White House press corps, okay? If you're going to get propaganda, it's got to come from the press secretary. Please. And then it's left up to, well, real journalists to parse that out, report it, and analyze it. And then we get to read the reportage and the analysis, and then we also get to make our own analysis. That's how it works. But we know we don't need right-wing white nationalists and their propagandists in the White House press corps anymore. Thank you, Joe. He's at a very accelerated clip, too, in writing these executive orders. Now, the only reason he's writing these executive orders is to undo the ridiculous executive orders that Trump instituted over time. So, you don't want executive orders? Don't have your guy put out a bunch of, illegal legislation out there that didn't pass muster with Congress. Speaking of which, Mitch McConnell, this group of GOP, they are the insurgent caucus, aren't they? They want us to forget that the insurrection on January 6th even happened. And we're supposed to have unity with Mitch. When Mitch was in the majority, it's all his litany was, hey, we're in the majority, we do what we want. We're in the majority, we do what we want. We're in the majority, we do what we want. We're in the minority, we have to have unity. We have to have comity. You can't change the rules of the Senate. Nice democracy you have there. Be a shame if something happened to it. Yeah, he threatened democracy because he's part of the insurgent caucus. Why are they allowed to be jurors in this impeachment trial? I mean, it's bad enough you got this Marjorie Taylor Greene already publicly pronouncing that she wants to kill Democrats and FBI agents. I thought the right wing was all about law and order. I thought the right wing was all about the cops. Yeah, only the cops that agree with them. Everybody else has to die. And they allow this thing to continue sitting in the House. Katie Porter had to quit because a vengeful, vindictive ex-husband put out some revenge porn. And when I say revenge porn, I mean pictures of her in compromising positions, as they say. And she was made to quit because she was the victim of this. And yet, Marjorie Taylor Greene called for insurrection, called for the murder and execution of Pelosi and others, and FBI agents. And she still gets to sit there in her position as an elected, because the GOP is the insurgent caucus and they would never hold their own people to account, ever. Unless that GOP member might agree with the Democrats in some legislation. Then their lives are threatened. It is a sad testimony when the reason that the Republicans have to toe the line for their base isn't because they're afraid of losing a midterm or being primary. They're afraid they're going to have a car bomb kill them. I would think that maybe you don't want those people on your side because they're not. They're only on your side if you do their bidding and then you die. That's not representative democracy. Please. I mean, people like that should be thrown in jail, you would think. Oh, it's political, as Tucker Carlson would say, to go after white nationalists because that means they'd go after you and me. You and me? No, they go after you. Please. And it's about time that the DOJ targeted white nationalists, these white militias. Because I got to tell you, they have a leadership, they have a hierarchy, they even have clubhouses. Find me one Antifa clubhouse, huh? You can't find a Antifa president on any college campus for the Antifa club, ever, anywhere in the world. But how many Missouri white nationalist militias are there? with their own clubhouses. And that's just, Missouri, say. Or Michigan. Or Oregon, even. Yeah, the Oregon GOP has put out their public proclamation that the January 6th insurrection was a false flag done by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. You saw the film, right? That was Antifa and Black Lives Matter. They were well disguised then, weren't they? Huh. And that Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. Donald Trump still is. That's the Oregon GOP. And they hold a lot of power down here in the southern part of the state, which is really odd when you think about it. Why is it always the South? Everybody says, we need to forget about the South. Well, there are people, good Democratic voters in the South. But you know what? Why is it that weird white nationalist bigots like the South? Well, it's not really necessarily true across the board, because we know about northern bigotry, don't we? But I wonder if it's in the south part of each state. Really weird how that works out. Anyway, the Oregon GOP holds a lot of power down here, and they're not afraid to tell you about it. I haven't, I don't know if they're still having their ISIS caravan through Grants Pass. The GOP and the Trumpsters were doing that for actually quite a few years. Every Saturday, they had to drive their big old monster trucks with their big old Trump flags and terrorize everybody. Yeah. And it would get rather raucous. They would yell the N-word out to the few black people that might happen to be shopping. That was a regular occurrence every Saturday. They let their feelings known. Yeah, feelings. Couldn't have Hillary be president because she had feelings. Can't have a female editor at the New York Times continue in her job because she really appreciated the fact that there was a transition between a fascist and an actual representative democracy president. Had to fire her because she felt good about that. Yeah, feelings. Trump went by his feelings. Look where it got us. Well, you know what my feeling is? That we better tell you what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, at least starting off. Well, of course, the Republicans in the Senate are counting on American Amnesia to disappear the January 6th insurrection, but I think they might have a hard time getting that through, because there's still a lot of people who remember what the hell happened. And we have the tapes. Lordy, do we have the tapes. On the rest of the menu, Biden is set to reopen the online health insurance marketplace and ease Medicaid rules. Obamacare is coming back. Republican-controlled states advance bills to limit abortion because when all else fails, go to your go-to, okay? And they do. And 190-year-old North Carolina-based department store chain Belk announced it is filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 190 years. Wow. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where two men have been extradited to the United States from Australia to face charges over a $50 million text messaging fraud. And the Biden administration will thoroughly review U.S. sanctions Trump imposed on the International Criminal Court. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. You can find that right there by the social media scroll, deftly located by Superior Graphic Design. Yes, indeed. If you would then look across the page to the left, and you'll hopefully find the link to our Patreon page. And that is there because I got to tell you, we pay our bills. And when you pay your bills, we have found that you're able to fly under the radar and do all sorts of things in a representative democracy that you would expect, even when there are, insurgent Nazis trying to destroy everything. That's why we are still Resistance Radio. We became full-fledged Resistance Radio when Trump took over, and now we have to continue it because the insurgents are still there. In fact, it's an insurgency because electeds are involved, and we're not going to let them get away with it, will we? Now, if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and could send those funds our way once a month, we stretch those dollars, we pay our bills, and we continue with our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many, many, many years ago. Thank you for your generosity, truly. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and he's also responsible for the superior graphic design and much more, too. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary. It will always be a diary, not a story. Look, I'm of a certain age, okay? In the decos cosmos. Anyway, that diary gets posted about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I link that show notes and links diary up on social media like Twitter and other platforms, and you know who they are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes out of Reuters, and if I can get my little cursor to get to the right spot, Trevor Honeycutt and Susan Heavey are the reporters for this first offering. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to reopen the nation's online health insurance marketplace as soon as this week. Well, it's the middle of the week. You better hurry up. And isn't it wonderful to be able to refer to the person sitting in the Oval Office as the president? Yeah, the Netroots Radio style manual changed accordingly. Now, of course, it did stipulate previous that it was Trump that couldn't be called the P word. Okay. So we didn't really have to change too much now, did we? Now, his plans on getting this online health insurance marketplace back up and running as soon as this week is according to a planning document offering Americans who cannot get coverage through their employers another way to obtain it. You know, Trump had shut down the online marketplace because, hey, if Obamacare is working, you got to make it not work. And it still kept working anyway, no matter what they did. Biden has vowed to restore full access to the healthcare.gov site, which provides a way to get a federal exchange offering health care insurance. The system was created by former President Barack Obama, and that was during the sweeping 2010 Affordable Care Act. Republicans have long sought to destroy the health care restructuring law, criticizing the cost and quality of care, as well as extensive government involvement in health care markets. You know, one of the reasons I'm sure that the National Guard was prevented from getting to the Capitol in a timely fashion is that the Republicans want to make sure government doesn't work. And if the National Guard had made it there and put down the insurrection, that would have proved government works. It really permeates everything in their psyche, and I consider them to be probably not members of the body politic, and we should probably cut them out, in this reporter's opinion. The order to reopen the federal exchange, which is normally accessible for just 6 weeks a year, could come as soon as tomorrow, Thursday, according to documents. The Biden administration has touted the move as necessary to fight the coronavirus pandemic and help Americans who have lost their insurance. Biden, who took office last week, you remember that, don't you? I mean, I know we have American amnesia, but you didn't forget that, did you? Please. Is also poised to reverse changes to Medicaid. Now, that's the government-run health insurance program for the poor, made under his Republican predecessor Donald Trump, although the details were still unclear, according to the planning document circulated by Biden aides with congressional allies. Well, Biden is going to speak about his plan to deal with the pandemic at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time, the White House said in a statement. A White House spokesman did not respond to a request for comment about the specific policy changes being planned. The United States has surpassed the milestone of 25 million known COVID-19 infections, with nearly 420,000 lives lost from the pandemic. Iris Samuels of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. 4 new proposed abortion restrictions passed the state house in Montana yesterday, Tuesday, one of several states where GOP gains are lending more momentum to prohibitions on the procedure. The bill comes as President Joe Biden looks to change course nationally on the issue, though the Supreme Court has a conservative majority that's given hope to anti-abortion activists. In Montana, GOP lawmakers are hoping to capitalize on the election of a Republican governor after 16 years of pro-abortion access Democratic governors. The Montana bills largely echo legislation already passed in other Republican-controlled states, including a ban on abortion in most cases after 20 weeks of gestation, a requirement that health care providers give pregnant women the opportunity to view an ultrasound before performing an abortion, the magic wand. This is all torture. Let's torture someone because we don't want them to have the medical care that they need. The Republicans. Yeah, they're all about small government, aren't they? Until they get to run government, and then they run it into the ground, and in the process take everybody's rights away, even their dignity. 3 of the Montana bills are repeats of similar measures vetoed by former Democratic Governor Steve Bullock last session. Current Governor Greg Gianforte, the guy that likes to slam little pipsqueak reporters to the ground because he can. I'd like to see him try that with me. Yeah, I'm a little harder to move. And let's see, he's giving anti-abortion lawmakers and activists hope that the bills would be signed into law. The bills, which passed the House largely along party lines, go next to the Montana Senate for consideration. The votes come after the Biden administration released a statement last week saying he would seek to codify the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision, establishing a nationwide right to abortion in federal law to protect it from court challenges. anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Belk, the Northern Carolina-based department store chain, which has catered to generations of shoppers for nearly 190 years, announced that it will file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The chain's owner, private equity firm Sycamore Partners, said in a news release yesterday, Tuesday, that Belk will continue with normal operations as it goes through bankruptcy. Sycamore Partners said it expects to emerge from bankruptcy by the end of February. It will retain majority control of Belk, according to an agreement it reached with some of Belk's creditors. A group of the department store's creditors, led by the private equity firms KKR and Blackstone, will get a minority stake. The bankruptcy plan will help Belk shed about $450 million of debt. The 133-year-old chain grew from the opening of a store in Monroe, North Carolina by William Henry Belk in 1888. 3 generations of the Belk family led the company to become the biggest family-owned department store chain in the country by 2015 when the family sold it for $3 billion. That's with a B. The sale to Sycamore loaded the chain with over $2 billion in debt at a time when department stores were losing popularity. The department store has struggled during the coronavirus pandemic as customers flocked to online shopping and avoided in-person shopping. Belk furloughed workers in March as the pandemic hit and cut senior staff pay up to 50% as stores temporarily closed. In July, Belk cut an undisclosed number of jobs, mostly at its headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina. That followed the elimination of 80 corporate jobs last February. Belk has more than 20,000 employees at its nearly 300 stores in 16 southeastern states. Its corporate offices opened in 1988 in Charlotte and now have about 1,300 workers. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, an afternoon in Chicago. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, named for one of the blues icon's songs, is adapted from the 1984 August Wilson stage play, part of his American Century cycle, the one from the 1920s. The cycle explores, one drama per 20th century decade, how African Americans worked through the mostly white power structure to get ahead. After Wilson's death in 2005, his estate sought out Denzel Washington to bring the plays to the screen. More are supposed to be coming from Netflix. The first was the well-received Fences from 2016, starring Washington and Viola Davis, who brings off Ma Rainey here with a dominance and swagger that's hard to picture any other actress working today pulling off. And she does it with maybe half the screen time of her co-star, the late Chadwick Boseman, who plays an ambitious horn player in Rainey's band. The film has a stagey feel to it, which is probably intentional with the selection of award-winning director George Wolfe, who's best known for his stage work. Most of the action occurs in one stuffy rehearsal room where the dynamics between Levy, the other band members, Ma, and Ma's girlfriend play out. and dynamics there are. A supporting cast, including the white management and studio personnel, deal with opportunity, celebrity, and the blinding frustration of 1920 Chicago, which, for African Americans, may have lacked burning crosses, but included plenty of other subtle and not-so-subtle racism. Way past a biopic, what we see in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom are seminal moments of a newly assertive black culture, with the characters looking inward, painfully, to find themselves in the context of a broader mission, one which we all know is yet to be fully achieved. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman.
And they'll basically crush or pop the head off of any worker who tries to attack them.
If you're a honeybee, a hornet attack could be the last thing you ever experience. It's a gory, violent process, and honeybees have had to adapt to stay alive. You've probably heard of those murder hornets that recently turned up in North America. This is not a story about those. This research takes us east to meet their cousins. Wellesley College biologist Heather Madela went to Vietnam to understand how Asian honeybees defend themselves from the hornets there.
And in Vietnam, that's the giant hornet, Vespa.
Typically, when a hornet invades an Asian honeybee hive, hundreds of bees surround the intruder and create what's called a heat ball. With the hornet caught in the center, the heat goes up and the oxygen goes down. The bees literally cook and choke the hornet to death. But Vespa has figured out a way to avoid this trap.
Giant hornets will hunt honeybees on their own and grab them one by one. But what is really lethal to honeybees is when they flip into a multiple hornet attack strategy. And when they do this, they essentially want to kill all the adult defenders so that the colony is no longer protected.
But in the face of this deadly bum rush, Asian honeybees have resorted to the scatological.
And a lot of the beekeepers hadn't noticed them, or if they had, they didn't know what they were. But there was a handful of beekeepers who had seen these spots.
Those spots, it turned out, were poop. The hive's decision to dip into the dung pile didn't come lightly, though. The alternative to covering their house in was annihilation of the colony in the face of an overwhelming giant hornet invasion.
And then at a certain point, the workers in the colony decide it's a lost cause and they'll abandon ship and everyone will leave, and that leaves the entire colony undefended. So at that point, the hornets can successfully, without any interference, break into the nest and occupy it. And when they take over a nest, what they do is ferry the bee larvae inside back to their own hornet larvae so that they can eat them.
One beekeeper told Madela and her colleagues that he had seen the honeybees collecting bits of water buffalo dung. He thought that might explain the spots. He thought the bees might be using the dung to keep the hornets away.
We confirmed that bees actually forage on dung, which is a surprise in itself.
Honeybees generally keep their nests clean and tidy. They're good at keeping diseases and pathogens out, two things that could be hiding in animal poop.
And the thought of them collecting feces in the field and intentionally bringing it back home was pretty stunning.
Whenever they detected a giant hornet nearby, but not other smaller hornets, the honeybees began to arrange bits of mammal or bird dung near the entrances to their hives. And the hornets themselves were less likely to land on a nest adorned with poop. If they did bother to land, they spent 94% less time attempting to break in. The study was published in the December 9 issue of the journal PLOS One. The researchers say this is the first time honeybees have ever been documented collecting non-plant matter. And because the bees are selective in what kind of poop they collect, and use it in a very specific way, they say it actually qualifies as tool use, the first known instance in wild bees. It isn't clear why or how the poop shield works, but Madela suspects that there must be some chemical inside the poop, presumably derived from the plants that the animals originally ate. that either actively repels the hornets or camouflages the scent of the bees' nests. American bees don't do this. Asian honeybees are a different species than the Western honeybees in Europe and North America.
I just can't even totally capture how much fun it really was to do this work. I didn't have a lot of personal experience with Asian bees, and so meeting them was kind of like meeting the crazy cousin of the bees you know really well. These bees are a lot smaller, but they're very, very fast and very reactive. And that's because of the kind of hornet pressure that they've evolved under. They have evolved to fly quite quickly in zigzagging patterns as they're approaching their nest so that they're very hard to catch.
Western honeybees did not evolve alongside hornets, as did their Asian cousins, which makes them especially susceptible to hornet attacks in places where giant hornets become introduced. If Madela and her team can figure out how poop keeps hornets away, it might help North American beekeepers help their bees to survive, if the so-called murder hornets decide they like it here. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The Virginia Declaration of Rights was written shortly before the Declaration of Independence. The Virginia Declaration defines inherent rights as those that all men cannot divest their posterity, meaning that no one can trade away their descendants' rights. The key words here are inherent and cannot. The rights Jefferson calls both inherent and inalienable are those that we are unable to get rid of, for the simple reason that they are part of us, helping to define what we are. The dictionary tells us that inherent means involved in the constitution or essential character of something. Thus, inalienable rights are inherent in us because they refer to specific qualities that make us human beings. Without them, we lose our humanity. With no inherent right to life and liberty, we would be in the same position as ordinary animals, such as cattle or sheep. Human beings are different. Our right not to be treated like an animal is part of our very nature that we are powerless to change. We are unable to change our nature, and so we are unable to rid ourselves of certain of our essential qualities, such as the capacity to make moral choices. These qualities are the basis of our inalienable rights. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1908. That was the day the United States Supreme Court ruled that bans on yellow dog contracts were unconstitutional in the case of Adair versus United States. The case served to nullify the Erdman Act of 1898, which banned such contracts for those who worked on moving trains in the railroad industry. The Erdman Act had been a response to the 1894 Pullman strike. At the time, the federal government smashed workers striking against deep wage cuts and for union recognition with Eugene V. Debs's American Railway Union. Seeking to prevent any disruptions along the railroads, the Erdman Act banned any contracts that required workers to renounce unions in order to gain employment, recognize the right of union organizations as a means of collective bargaining, and established mechanisms for the arbitration of grievances. In 1906, William Adair, a supervisor with the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, fired a member of the Order of Locomotive Firemen for his membership. Adair was indicted under the Erdman Act, found guilty, and fined. He then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. The Supreme Court ruled that the Erdman Act violated the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment and served to supersede the Commerce Clause in the Constitution. The court argued that the railroad's employment decisions were a protected right so long as they did not injure the public interest. Congress could not criminalize the firing of an employee because of union membership. Dissenting opinions centered on the potential for renewed labor conflict. Workers would have to wait almost 25 years for yellow dog contracts to be banned in all industries with the passage of the 1932 Norris-LaGuardia Act. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
I'm Mark Boulanger. Last year, as the effects of COVID-19 hit workplaces, 9% of global working hours were lost, the equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs. This is 4 times greater than the number of jobs lost during the 2009 global financial crisis. The depressing job figures are included in the latest edition of the ILO Monitor. The ILO is the UN specialized agency focused on matters of work in the world. It is headed for the first time in its 101-year history by a trade unionist, Guy Ryder. Mr. Ryder, the Director General of the ILO, presented the results of the Monitor survey in an online media conference.
The ILO has been tracking the impact of COVID-19 on the world of work since March of last year. And this, our 7th edition of our COVID Monitor, looks back at the entirety, the whole of 2020, and it includes the latest data that we have on the effects of the pandemic. This includes on working hour losses, on income losses, on unemployment, and on inactivity, and contains as well data broken down by region, by country, age, gender, income group, and sector. We also set out some of the key criteria, some of the key issues that we believe will need to be addressed if we are to ensure that recovery really is sustainable, equitable, and inclusive, which, of course, we wish to see. So I want to highlight some of the key points. So let me start by looking at labour markets in the year that's just concluded, 2020. And above all, this edition of the Monitor confirms the massive impact of COVID-19 on labour markets in 2020. This has been the most severe crisis for the world of work since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Its impact is far greater than that of the global financial crisis of 2009. When comparing with the last quarter of 2019, we now see that 8.8% of global working hours were lost in the course of the year. And that is the equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs. So overall last year, the loss of working hours was 8.8% of the total. And I repeat, that is the equivalent of 255 million full-time jobs lost. Now, if you look at this total figure a little bit more closely, what we see is about half of the lost working hours can be accounted for by reduced hours of work for those still in employment. The rest has come from unprecedented levels of loss of employment. And here a total of 114 million people have been affected. What I think is particularly concerning is that the great majority of this loss of employment, 71%, and that is the equivalent of 81 million people, has translated into labour market inactivity. These people have simply dropped out of the labour market. Either they are unable to work, perhaps because of pandemic restrictions or social obligations, or they've given up looking for work. And so their talents, their skills, their energy have been lost. Lost to their families, lost to our society, lost to us all. As a consequence of all of this, there have been massive losses in global labour market income, equivalent, and this is before income support, equivalent to $3.7 trillion US, an extraordinary figure.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We have a bit of a snow shower mixed with rain, and we'll have cloudy with showers throughout the day, going up to a high in the mid-40s. And we're expecting, maybe about a quarter of an inch, and winds will be out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Overnight lows will be in the mid-30s and will be overcast with rain showers at times, winds light and variable, and we're expecting about a third of an inch overnight and then light rain early tomorrow, remaining cloudy with showers in the afternoon, highs in the mid-40s, expecting a little less than a quarter of an inch, and then a mix of rain and snow in the next few days after that. Something to look forward to. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now increased to 7,234 with 97 confirmed deceased. Pollen right here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 25 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is still at a wintertime low of 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.53 inches. Visibility is down to 2 miles. And relative humidity is at 95%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they put them somewhere on their property, and they crowdsource with all sorts of other people who have weather stations that they put somewhere on their property, and these people come from around the world. London is 49 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 45 and cloudy. Rome is 52 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 32 and cloudy. Kabul is 33 with its ever-present wintertime smoke. Hong Kong is 60 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 46 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 50 degrees and mostly cloudy with a flood watch because of copious amounts of water coming through their air. And New York, New York is 37 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they planted somewhere on their property. And we're not going to do the P-tape anymore. These people crowdsource with their weather stations, and these people come from around the world. Jonathan Stempel of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. 2 men have been extradited to the United States from Australia to face charges over their roles in a scheme to bilk hundreds of thousands of mobile phone users out of more than $50 million for unwanted text messaging services. Michael Pierce, a 52-year-old Australian national, and Yong Chao Liu, a 33-year-old Chinese national, are being detained after making initial appearances in Manhattan federal court yesterday, Tuesday. U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss in Manhattan accused the defendants and their co-conspirators of using a practice they called auto-subscribing to charge monthly fees for unsolicited messages about celebrity gossip, horoscopes, jokes, love tips, and trivia without customers' knowledge or permission, and they charged them. And they charged them pretty deep, too, apparently. Pierce and Liu were charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. And Pierce was also charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering. Both defendants arrived in the United States on Monday. Daniel Lynch, a lawyer for Pierce, said his client has pleaded not guilty and will propose a bail package at a February 9 hearing. Liu's lawyer did not respond to a request for comment. Prosecutors said Pierce was the chief executive and Liu was a Java development engineer for a company called Bull Roarer. According to court papers, Bull Roarer was affiliated with Tato Inc., a company that purchased large numbers of mobile phone numbers to target with messages. Victims were charged $9.99 a month, even if they ignored or deleted the messages, and were often unaware anything was amiss.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mais automne, quand les feuilles tombent partout, si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Simon Lewis of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Biden administration will thoroughly review U.S. sanctions on international criminal court officials imposed over investigations into U.S. forces in Afghanistan, a State Department spokesman said yesterday, Tuesday. Much as we disagree with the ICC's actions relating to the Afghanistan and Israeli-Palestinian situations, the sanctions will be thoroughly reviewed as we determine our next steps, the spokesman said in a written response. The Trump administration last year accused the Hague-based tribunal of infringing on U.S. national sovereignty when it authorized an investigation into war crimes committed by Afghan forces, the Taliban, or U.S. troops. It targeted court staff, including prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, with asset freezes and travel bans for investigating American citizens without U.S. consent. And of course, we're not a member of the court because we're so exceptional, aren't we? Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, also opposed an investigation in 2019 into war crimes in the Palestinian territories, including by Israeli forces. The new U.S. administration supports reforms to help the court better achieve its core mission of punishing and deterring atrocity crimes and may cooperate with the ICC in exceptional cases. Well, Good. That brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.